Welcome back to the IDC radio at 106.4. Here with me is Judith Miller, American journalist and Pulitzer Prize winner. Judith, welcome and thanks for being with us.
I'm delighted to be here.
Judith, you went to jail in the summer of 2005 to protect the identity of a confidential source who spoke to you about the CIA spy, Valerie Plame. Her identity was revealed after her husband challenged President Bush on his invasion of Iraq. You're also the only person who went to jail in what came to be known as Plamegate. A movie recently came out about this story called Fair Game, and it was actually very popular in Israel. It still is in the cinemas, and I saw it recently. Yet your character does not appear in the film.
I didn't want to be part of that narrative because I don't believe that's what happened. And I was very pleased not to be part of the narrative. And in fact, afterwards, even though I normally don't review movies for a living, I did review this one for, I think it was the Wall Street Journal, saying that it is a very powerful movie, brilliantly acted, well directed, nicely written, but it bears absolutely very little resemblance to the truth in many important respects, and Americans should know that.
How was your time in jail, and what memories do you keep of it?
You know what I remember? Once I decided to make the best of it and turn this into a reporting opportunity. How did the jail work? Who were the jailers? How did the system function? What were the chances of getting out once you were assigned there? What was the culture of the place like? I found it very interesting. I also got a lot of reading done. It was very claustrophobic. It wasn't the way I would have chosen to spend the summer of 2005, but in the scale of things that can happen to you in life that are unpleasant, I wouldn't even say it was the most difficult moment of my life.
You spent some time in Egypt when you were the Cairo bureau chief for the New York Times. On what end of this line of fundamentalism and radicalization you're talking about does Egypt stand at the moment?
Look, I think something that's happened to Egypt is it's become a much more Islamic society, much more observant society. When I went to Egypt, my first trip, I hate to tell you when it was as a student in 1971, but when I was based there in 86, I'd say about a third of Egyptian women wore the hijab, and almost nobody wore the niqab because that wasn't an Egyptian thing. That was imported from the Gulf. When I went back last year, almost every woman except the Coptic Christians was covered.
I think they have very little choice. The women in Egypt now get looked upon very negatively if they aren't covered.
And that tells you something about what the majority of people in that society believes and where Egypt is going. So you have this Islamic revival going on. But you also, at the same time with Egypt, that people always underestimate, have a great sense of Egyptianness, of the fact that, yes, we are Muslims, but before that, or along with that, we are Egyptians. We are not even Arabs unless we're leading the Arab world, but we are the first the first people of this region. They have tremendous pride and sense of their accomplishments, the pyramids, the work of Allah, as far as they're concerned, is all around them. It's in their DNA. So, do you want, for many Egyptians, to adopt the path of bin Laden, to adopt the path of Islamic militancy is actually a perversion of Islam. It's to go backwards. And I think that what we can hope for is that the Egyptian sense of being Egyptian is stronger than this identification with what passes as for kind of the trendy kind of Islam at the moment, which tends to be more militant, less tolerant, more radical.
In the 80s, could you ever feel that kind of rage that is going on now and that the youth, especially in Egypt, is feeling? Could you foresee in any way what was going to happen?
I warned about it. In my book, God Has 99 Names, Reporting from a Militant Middle East, I said Egypt is on the verge of this volcano. It's on the tip. You could just feel the rumblings underneath. There were 30,000 Egyptians in jail on being accused of radicalism and Islamism at that time, and they were being tortured and abused, and the things that led the majority of Egyptians to say, kafaya, enough.
The Egyptian regime would say that in the recent years, a lot of Arab media, Al Jazeera, on top of that, would be a very important factor of the whole radicalization, and they would specifically say that Al Jazeera in these events almost organized them, and it's kind of trying to give a more democratic feel to something that has a different agenda. How would you feel on that kind of attack on Al Jazeera and on different Arab countries trying to sell us maybe a different picture?
What we saw in the past week cannot be written off as an Al Jazeera plot or a Muslim Brotherhood's sabotage of the regime. It was a genuine outpouring of an elite part of the population saying, we who think that freedom is worth as much as bread deserve to be heard. And I think they were heard. I think they were heard around the world. And as an American, I was very proud to be able to say that many of them said they were inspired by the political freedom that they had seen in America. I think that's good.
Giving youth in the Middle East now this courage to attempt to overthrow their leaders. Why now?
Numbers count, demography matters. The same thing happened to my generation with the Vietnam War. We get a certain critical mass in a society, just in terms of numbers, and people feel empowered by the fact that there are so many of you. And I think that's happened in Egypt.
Do you think that the rage that you see in the streets in Egypt now can be translated to the right mindset when it comes to electing the next government?
The critical question. Will this outpouring of the demand for pro-democracy be hijacked by Muslim brothers or others who don't share those goals? Entirely possible. When you go into a political vacuum, the best organized group tends to win. But you know what? I'm betting on these young Egyptians. I think they can do more than Twitter. But I think we have time. They have time to organize parties, put together a coalition for the values that they want, for the policies that they want. Nobody knows how this turns out. I mean, I'd love to be a clairvoyant. I'm not. I don't know. But I do know that Egypt has a great moment now. This is a great moment for Egypt and for the Arabs. And I'm very optimistic about the Egyptian ability to do what's in their interest. They've had so much that went against them for so long. Democracy depends on a change of blood and letting new people and new ideas come to the fore. That's what we depend on, and Egypt deserves a shot at it.
Well, thank you for your words. It was extremely interesting. Judith Miller, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you, and good luck to you all.
Thank you.
See you again.